has said, our speakers today, Ed Stansberry and Jessica McNear, will update us on the status of the Opportunity Campus. Ed Stansberry is Executive Director of the Voluntary Action Center, often called VAC. He was born and raised in Moberly, Missouri, graduating from Moberly High School. He received his Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Baker University in Baldwin, Kansas. Ed owned a distribution business in central Missouri for more than 25 years before making the decision to move to a position of servant leadership in a manner that allows him to give back. Ed and his wife Sid have 2 grown children, Pete and Ellie, a daughter-in-law Claire, and 3 grandchildren, Jack, Isla. Jack is 14, Isla is 4, and Margot 2. They have called Columbia home since 1988. Ed is active in his church, which is Broadway Christian Church, having served as a deacon, elder, stewardship chair, vision committee chair, Sunday school teacher, and board chair. He loves to hunt and fish and support Mizzou, the St. Louis Cardinals, and Kansas City Chiefs. Jessica McNear is the shelter director for VAC's Opportunity Campus. She was born and raised in San Francisco, California, and graduated Macon High School after her family moved to Missouri. Jessica has been a proud resident of Columbia since 2002, when she started college at Mizzou. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration and a Master of Science in Management and Leadership, as well as an MBA. Jessica has worked in social services for over 15 years, most recently as Director of Shelter Services at the Rape and Abuse Crisis Services in Jefferson City. She and her husband, Mac, have 5 children, ages 7 to 21. Welcome, Ed and Jessica.
Thank you all very much. While Jess pulls this up, I just want to say thank you for making this opportunity available to us. I know, as David said, before we actually started the meeting, there's been a lot of conversation about VAC Opportunity Campus, and we're here to kind of tell you what we will be doing and also some of the things that we will not be doing, because there has been some misinformation flying around from time to time, as happens with projects like this. But I'm going to focus on the VAC side of things, and then I will turn the program over to Jessica, who will provide some more detail on the homeless services that we'll be providing on campus. We are kind of frozen. Are you guys hearing us okay?
Yeah, you sound fine.
I think it's just on.
Okay, very good. Here. All right, so VAC Opportunity Campus, we approach every one of our clients campus-wide with these 3 tenets that you see listed below: dignity, stability, and possibility. Okay, is the dongle in? Go ahead. We're having a little technical issue. Hang on a second. Oh,
it's changing on the screen. I think it's just the TV that you're looking at.
Okay.
So we might want to trade spots.
Well, yeah, we'll trade spots.
Yeah, we see the next slide. Okay.
Okay, great. This particular slide gives you an aerial view of the campus. It sits on about 6 acres on the east end of the business loop, on the north side, just east of the city power plant. The building you see on the left is the Cindy Mustard Resource Center. Some of you may remember Cindy as a longstanding executive director for over 20 years of VAC. So Cindy really laid the foundation for what we're able to do today. The Resource Center is on the left-hand side of the left-hand building. You'll see that on the right-hand side, Burl and Clarity are noted. Borough will be providing mental health and substance abuse treatment on campus. Clarity Healthcare will provide primary medical care on campus. They will occupy about 5,000 square feet of that wing to provide those services. Borough and Clarity have just been merged with a larger corporation called Centerstone. So their logo and their branding will actually be Centerstone once they move on campus. The yellow hatched area there at the bottom of that building is about 1,800 square feet for community partners to move in and out of. And Jessica will get to some detail on those, but we have about 30 other nonprofit community partners that have agreed to provide services and programming on the campus. And we're thrilled with that response from that group of folks. The building on the right-hand side is called The Hub. That will house Waypoint Shelter on the right, which most of you will know formally as Room at the Inn or Ratty. Ratty dissolved as of January 1 and folded their operations into VAC. So we absorbed their staff of about 21 January the 1st. And again, Jess will get into more details on that. Turning Point, which is now doing business as New Day Columbia, will occupy that space as noted. And then Loaves and Fishes will have a commercial kitchen and a dining room in the area noted there. The wing to the left between the two buildings is office area for Jessica and her case management staff that again she will provide some details on. So both of these buildings comprise about 50,000 square feet of space on that 6-acre property. We have about 1.5 acres of undeveloped space that's off the screen to your right. VAC is a basic needs social services agency. Our phrase is that basic needs aren't negotiable. So we are a nonprofit responding to the basic needs of individuals and families in Boone County, and we provide financial assistance and essential resources and meaningful connections so that people in our community can take the next step forward. I think, well, we'll get into a little more of this, but I think one of the things that really differentiates VAC, we provide our services on a first come, first served basis through our lobby. So folks that come to us for services typically leave with the services they came in for that day. So we pride ourselves on immediate response to those needs because the folks that come into our lobby are all in some level of crisis, and some handle it better than others. I always like to give a shout out to our VAC staff, which currently numbers about 15, not including the Ratty staff. So with them, we're at about 36 now, that none of them get into this business for the money. They have a heart for what we do and a passion for the people that we serve. So for us to have this new space, which the total capital project was about $18.6 million, is a huge benefit for our staff, and not only for their quality of life in the workplace, but also as an executive director for retention when it comes to employees that are working in this kind of difficult environment. VAC is in its 57th year of existence. We were founded in 1969 as VIC, which was a volunteer information center to connect folks to opportunities to volunteer. Changed that name to VAC, the Voluntary Action Center, in 73. In 1977, our Fish Fund was established, which was a response to the faith community. That stands for Faith in Service to Humanity. As most of you can imagine, many churches were getting folks coming to them for assistance, and they approached VAC to say, hey, how can we work together to do this? And we said, well, we can provide the services for you if you can provide some financial support for us to provide those services. So that fund began in 1977. In 1983, our holiday program was established. It is ongoing. Last year, we served over 1,080 Boone County families with our holiday program. And as you can imagine, in 2021, the COVID response led to a 153% increase in services we provided. Now, I will add this caveat to that statement. We thought that COVID would be the height of demand for vax services. And what we realized was it brought to mind, well, I am in the Democrat circle here, so you'll appreciate this comment, but it reminded me of the race that Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. And so we have seen since the rise of inflation over the last few years that really drives more so than COVID folks needing the services we provide. And as we get into those services, you'll, I think, understand how that came to be. You'll see some of the statistics on the right-hand side. We served 8,472 unduplicated individuals last year, providing them with almost 22,000 services from 27 programs and services that we provide. And I'll get into some detail on that. We only have two criteria for services. You have to be a resident of Boone County, so we're hyper-local in our focus. And you have to have an income at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, which is a sliding scale based on the number of folks in your household to determine what that income level is for you to receive services. We have a very modest $100 per household annual limit for folks. And that is basically driven, we evaluate that on a regular basis, but it's basically driven by the amount of funds that we have available to serve the folks that need the help. So these are the statistics. Again, I think we can skip this one. So, because I went over some of these in the last slide. So these are our core services. Food, we offer an emergency food pantry in partnership with the Food Bank for Central and Northeast Missouri. Folks can get food from the food bank once a month. If that is not sufficient for them, they can come to our emergency food pantry an additional 4 times per year. So they can do that 4 days in a row. They can do it once a quarter, whatever they see fit. We do provide housing assistance. As some of you know, some of the HUD funding for those services is in jeopardy at the federal level. And we are very concerned about how that's going to trickle down to not just Columbia, but communities across the country. And full transparency, we fear that those cuts are going to result in a significant increase in our homeless population. We provide health assistance as well in the form of medical copays, eyeglass copays, prescription copays. That's one of our highest need services. The clothing that we provide is in partnership with the wardrobe. We also will help folks if they need scrubs for a new job, if they need steel-toed boots for a construction job or a tool belt, those kind of things for employment-related clothing. We do provide an enormous amount of assistance for baby and child from diapers with a partnership with First Chance for Children and the Assistance League has changed their name to Up to Good, so I've got to get used to that. But they also provide us with baby hygiene packs. We do provide some employment assistance, mainly in the form of helping folks with car repair to get to their jobs or gas vouchers for the same thing to get to jobs or an interview. we do not provide employment services like JobPoint does. In other words, interview readiness, resume preparation. That's not what we do. We will refer folks to the folks that do that. Transportation, I touched on gas vouchers. Probably one of the biggest things we do is the identification services, because for most folks, they can't interview for a job. They cannot access benefits if they don't have the proper identification. So that's one of the big things we do. And then personal care in the form of hygiene packs and household cleaning packs that we also do in a partnership with Up to Good. It's a lot of information, I know. So these are the 4 primary programs that we offer the community on an annual basis. Our fan program is ongoing right now. That is funded by private donors who either go buy a fan and donate the fan or send us $20 to buy a fan. We will give out over 400 fans this year. We are way ahead of last year's fan program numbers. We started it on May the 4th. Our holiday program, as I mentioned, will serve over 1,000 Boone County families again this year. That's done through a bevy of volunteers as well as sponsors who team up with the families to provide the gifts to the kiddos on their wish list. And this all happens in a 1-week time frame. Our sponsors drop gifts off early in the week, and our clients come and pick them up later that week. And it really is one of the most gratifying programs that we do, because the tears and the gratitude are really meaningful to all of us to be able to do that at the holiday time. Our back to school program provides backpacks outfitted with school supplies to over 800 kids in Boone County to have them ready to be prepared for school, to start school on the right track. And we've been doing that program for a number of years as well. And then our air conditioning exchange program is done in partnership with Boone Electric Cooperative and the City of Columbia if folks have an older window unit or a broken window unit, they can come drop off their old unit and pick up a brand new unit to take home. That program is usually limited to about 50 units a year. So I'm going to turn this over to Jessica, but before I do, I'm going to pat her on the back a little bit. We did a nationwide search for this position of shelter director because in my eminent wisdom, I just knew that there was not going to be anyone local that was prepared to do this job. And we did indeed do a national search and talk to people from Vermont to Texas to Colorado. And at the end of the day, Jessica in our own backyard was at the top of everyone's list. So we're really fortunate to have Jessica on the team and driving the bus for shelter operations. And she is in the process of assembling a team that I think is going to really set a standard for this work that we're about to embark on here. So I will turn it back over to Jessica McNear.
Musical chairs.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Jessica McNear. I'm the shelter director for the VAC Opportunity Campus. It sounds like everyone in this meeting has stayed pretty well versed in terms of the homeless situation that we are experiencing in Columbia, but what we know is the entire country is experiencing the same. Our demand for emergency services continues to climb year over year, and that's not limited to emergency shelter. That's our emergency rooms at our hospital systems, our psychiatric systems, our nonprofits. What we're seeing is for every one person that we are getting housed, we're seeing 2 coming into homelessness for the first time ever. So we are really in unprecedented times, and that's visible. And we know the need is growing. Columbia has not added a shelter bed in 20 years. So this is a piece that VAC picked up, which I think is very on brand for VAC. As we have grown over 50 years, we've ebbed and flowed with the gaps and needs for Boone County. And so this is just another very large scale example of VAC being willing to step up and respond to this crisis. And we're here to help get it somewhat stabilized before it gets worse. So we will start talking about our Housing First shelter. So right now, as Ed said, Room at the Inn dissolved January 1, and we absorbed their staff. So there's three modalities that we are primarily focusing on as we create programming and processes and procedures for Waypoint, which is going to be the new shelter. And one of those principles is Housing First. And we know that the evidence-based research shows that Housing First principles have a 97% effective rate, which means when we're able to get people housed, we are not seeing them coming back into homelessness again. So we are focused on providing stable housing first. So people don't have to worry about where am I going to lay my head tonight? Am I safe? And they don't have to start or earn sobriety, employment, or being program ready, because we know that this is very prohibitive for folks who have experienced trauma and need to get out of their fight or flight before they can really start focusing on some of those aspects. So again, it's a 97% long-term housing retention rate, where we are seeing people get into housing and stay in housing. For Columbia, this means it will reduce the visible homelessness in our neighborhoods, although it is going to continue to get worse. We are anticipating this will decrease emergency service calls for our law enforcement and help unbottleneck at the emergency room, both at Boone, MU, and the psychiatric center. We are adamant on connecting people to professional wraparound support. So once they're in housing, we are still following up. We're still checking in and making sure they have all the support they need in order to stay housed. Again, we know this is proven effective. It's not anecdotal evidence. It is has been highly statistically researched and evidence-based that this is an effective model. And that's operated by our trusted and trained team, both on the VAC office side and the shelter side. So, like I said, there's three evidence-based approaches we are highly focused on. In addition to the Housing First principles, we are also incredibly centered on trauma-informed care, which essentially means we approach every person that comes to our shelter or to one of our services, assuming that they have experienced a significant trauma in their life at some point. We know 90% of our unhoused folks have experienced child abuse. We know 100% have experienced a trauma. I think around 75%, a research study showed, are suffering from traumatic brain injuries or TBIs. So what you might have at a glance is someone coming to your door that appears to be intoxicated or appears to have mental health issues or, is inherently violent. And what we know about trauma is it quite literally changes your brain, and the behavior they're exhibiting could just be how their trauma is presenting. So we always provide options. We try and create safe spaces. We do a lot of collaborating with the client instead of just telling them you have to do this, this, or this. For our other modality, we utilize the empowerment model. So we give them the information, the coaching, the tools, the resources, the direction, but we don't do it for them. We keep them at the steering wheel, making their own decisions. So if they, need help calling around to landlords to see if there's any available housing. We might make one call to demonstrate that for them, but then we're going to have them make the next one and kind of coach them through. Because ultimately, there's a lot of talk about service resistance with our in-house population. And I think folks are trying to find a better word to use for that. I tend to call it service exhaustion, because how many times a day, a week, can you be seeking out resources or filling out applications and hearing no before it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore. It's so defeating. So when we're making those calls or we're turning in applications, if they get a yes, we want them to be able to say it's because they made the call and not feel like every time they need to do something or apply for something that, well, Jessica helped me, so I need Jessica to do this too, because they'll tell me no, but if she does it, then it'll be a yes. We want them to own their wins. So we will be utilizing the empowerment model. It doesn't mean that we aren't assisting them or we're saying figure it out on yourself, but we will lay all the cards out, and then ultimately they choose the direction they want to go. This is a kind of basic floor map of what Waypoint Shelter in the new hub building on the VAC-OC campus is going to look like. On the right of your screen, you'll see what look like first aid kits. We actually have individual wellness rooms. So as this was being developed through COVID, the idea was if someone came in and had COVID, there would be a way to still bring them in to give them a safe space while not spreading it to the rest of the population. So we have talked about utilizing these wellness rooms for everything from someone being sick to if someone's needing to quarantine, if we have people who are exceptionally inebriated or have severe sensory disorders, or maybe is coming back from having a medical procedure done at the hospital. There are some areas where they can go and still be monitored to ensure nobody's having a medical emergency, but they'll be in a room on their own. Unfortunately, the two fastest growing populations of homeless folks are kids phasing out of the foster system. These 18 and 19-year-old kids were also the ones that were isolated in foster care during COVID when school was remote and everyone was social distancing. As the mom of a couple of college freshman girls, this generation, their class is struggling because of that. And so when we quantify that to being in foster care and being isolated, you can imagine how it is turning 18 or 19 in the world saying, okay, go be a functional adult now. Good luck. And if you don't, we're going to shame you. So we have a lot of 18 and 19-year-olds coming into the program right now. We also have a lot of seniors who have been on fixed incomes. We have people who even have pensions or are veterans, and the cost of rent on average in Columbia has drastically increased. I think from 2023, it was just over $1,000 on average. In 2024, I think it jumped to $1,300. And then from December of 2025 to January of 2026, it jumped to $1,400 or $1,500 on average. So when you're talking about folks who maybe have $1,000 or $2,000 a month of income, as you add those $100 on top of gas increasing, inflation, all of that kind of stuff, the rubber band can only stretch so thin before it pops. And that's where we're seeing a lot of people coming in. Along with that, we have people that are really in need of hospice and nursing home or skilled nursing facilities that don't have the resources to access those. And so we have folks that are doing hospice in camps. We have folks who are at end of life in shelter right now. So we are working really hard to create programs and groups and supports so that we can ensure our folks that are unhoused and maybe don't have family can still move through their end of life with dignity. In this space, you'll see there's 6 sections. So our space looks like an open gymnasium, if you will. It's much larger than that, but it is communal. And so we have 2 curtains that drop down, running east to west, that section it off into 3 spaces. And then we will be getting an additional partition that runs down the middle so that we can have kind of 6 secluded spaces for each population. So we will have our loud area because you don't have to be sober in order to have a safe place to sleep. We also have some loud snorers and people who talk in their sleep. So we have sound machines and air purifiers and things that we can use in this section to kind of absorb some of that noise. We have our general men's and women's sections. We are going to be pet friendly, which is something we're very excited about. We know that only 5 to 10% of shelters are pet friendly, so that excludes a very large population from being able to access safe shelter because most of the time they will not leave their pets. That's their fur baby and that's who they prioritize. So we will have a pet friendly area. We know that several of our folks that are in encampments are actually on the autism spectrum. So coming into a shelter environment, particularly when it's communal, is sensory overload. The sights, the smells, the sounds, people everywhere, the lighting can be harsh. We sometimes can get people to come in when the weather is really, really bad, and you can just watch them slowly start to have a panic attack because it is just overwhelming. So we'll have a sensory modulated area that will have a nice calming canopy with sound machines, aromatherapy, air purifiers, and individual bed tents that will kind of allow people to feel like they're in a little bit more of a secure kind of cocoon where it's almost like a sensory deprivation area. And then we will have a section for our veterans. Keeping in line with trauma-informed care, we know our veterans require a certain level of situational awareness in order to feel safe. And so we will be designating a space specifically for our veterans. We, keeping along with being pet friendly, we have 5 kennel runs, so dogs can actually go in just like you'd see at the Humane Society. They can get in and out. We have a veterinary exam room. So as animals are coming in, if they're needing a rabies or Bordella shot or any kind of vaccine, if they're needing a flea treatment, any kind of exam, we have that available in addition to a washing station. We're planning on having an off-leash fenced-in area outside, so our dogs we know aren't going to come in and have the zoomies all at the same time. But the evidence behind allowing co-sheltering for pets and owners also has an extremely high success rate. It alleviates a lot of anxiety, and a lot of pet owners will tell you they didn't care enough about themselves to get their own place or get sober, but they are highly motivated by doing everything they can for their pets. So we're very excited about being able to be pet friendly. We also have a laundry room and a coffee and breakfast station. We serve a continental breakfast in the morning to all of our guests. We're hoping one day we can expand that to a community meal similar to Loaves and Fishes. But for now, we're making sure people have some food in their bellies before they leave for their day. And then we have individual restrooms and showers, which is so needed in our community. Right now, we have about 4 showers, and we're seeing on average over 100 people a day. So if you can imagine, I have 5 kids, so 2 bathrooms in our house for 6 or 7 people. is a nightmare. I can't imagine how that feels to be one of 100 needing two. So our shelter has historically been 21 and older. We will be 18 and older. It is ADA accessible, which is a large upgrade from the buildings that we are running homeless services out of right now. We will have language access, which includes ASL, Spanish, French, weird dialects of French. We have some great connections and volunteers that we're excited to have them come in and help offer any kind of translation on site. We are a low barrier shelter, which does not mean no barrier, but folks do not have to have an ID in order to be able to come and have a safe space. They also don't have to be sober, but they cannot use on the property. If we find any kind of drugs or alcohol, we do dispose of those. We want to make sure, even if people are actively using, that they can come in and also be safe, and we can plant those seeds to kind of help start getting them to a place of sobriety. As Ed said, VAC serves Boone County. We're hyper locally focused. For us on the shelter side, there are some exceptions. Those would be if someone has accessed, we're seeing a lot of people coming out of the hospital system. They were brought in by an ambulance or a law enforcement officer, maybe a family or friend, and then they get stranded in Columbia and they don't have a way back. We will allow them to stay at shelter for a few days while they access the first and last mile through the Divert and City program to get a ride back to their communities. We also know that there's folks coming for medical treatments in Columbia that they can only have done in Columbia. And so if they just can't afford a hotel, we'll allow them to stay with us until their medical procedure. If they are a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault, we know that that requires them to be able to get a certain proximity from their abuser in order to feel safe. And so we'll provide those folks shelter as long as it takes to get them into a more appropriate domestic violence or sexual assault agency. We are first come, first served. We usually start check-in at 6:30 and run it through 7:30. But folks can call to see if we have any cot space available, or I'm sorry, bed space available. They can walk in, but there's a chance if we're full, we wouldn't be able to accommodate them. We do have safety and security at check-in. We also have a safety and security team that will be on campus. They are relational security. So they are the folks that already have a very good relationship with our unhoused population. They're our best crisis interventionalists and de-escalators. They're the folks you want to see when you're having your worst day ever, because they are highly relational. And they will be providing safety and security not just on campus, but in our close proximity of our neighborhood. We have residential houses towards Rangeline and Lakeview. We have some nonprofits in our area and businesses, and so they will all have a private number to our safety and security team, and 24/7 they will be able to call that number if someone is loitering on their property, and our team will go out, make contact with that person, and see if they can get them to come up to the OC. We're pet friendly upon intake, so that means people can come, they can bring their fur babies, but once they have done an intake, they can't go adopt a pet. Otherwise, we might end up having as many pets as we do people. We will have belongings storage, so for documents, birth certificates, social security cards, IDs that are accessible 24/7. We'll also be providing medication storage, so our folks don't have to carry those around, or if they need reminders. We are a night-by-night shelter for the most part. The emergency shelter model is 90 days. I am not a fan of that. I've seen that model perpetuate homelessness more than helping. So we have a Pathways to Permanence program. We know that there is no affordable housing right now, and it's going to take our folks a little bit longer just to find a place. So if they're working the program, if they're doing case management, if it's really just they're just waiting on something to become available, we will we want the long-term positive outcome. We don't just want to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound that's going to be an issue again in 30 or 90 days. These are some of the programs we're going to be offering pretty much from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. At the Hub building. So if you imagine a college campus, there's always activities and groups and things to do, things to get involved in. And so we will be offering, it's not even limited to this list. These are just some of the examples. Groups coming in and doing quilting classes or a community garden or farm to table, cooking, baking, financial assistance, budgeting, whatever people want to learn or delve into. We want them to be able to have the opportunity to explore different things and be engaged. We also want to ensure that we are creating an easy access point for folks to make connections in the community. So when they're in their own place, they have things to continue to do, people to see, and be in contact with, and that they don't feel like they have to just come back to the shelter for their community. This is our funding update. We've raised 16.2 million so far. We're anticipating operations across the entire campus to be at 2.2 to 2.5 million annually. That's going to be funded by rental income with some of our tenants that are coming in. We received 585,000 from the city, which is the same amount Room at the Inn had been receiving. And then we've received some very generous grants and I think around 5 million in private donors. So we have been very thankful for having such a generous community around us. I think that is all the slides. So let me stop sharing and we can open it for questions.
Well, I'll brag on this group and say that they are very good with all the details and the heavy weeds. You certainly provided us with a lot of details. I know there was one in chat about medical situation. Alice
Yes.
asked, do you refer folks to Compass for medical and dental? Their funding is at risk on state and federal level. Well, that would be true about any of the Medicaid backed services. Do you anticipate, or how are you anticipating problems and changes in medical care that way?
I think on the medical care side, we're going to go in the weeds a little bit here too. Centerstone is planning what is called an FQHC, a federally qualified health clinic. And Centerstone is the administrator for Boone County. And Compass is, while they have a Boone County presence, they're the administrator for Cole County. So we have a really good working relationship with Compass, but it made more sense for us to go with Centerstone/Burrell for the medical clinic. So on the FQHC, Centerstone will be providing navigators for Medicaid. We will have that skill too to also help folks navigate Medicaid. But what an FQHC allows is that there is a subsidy that allows the clinic to serve folks that don't have insurance and no ability to pay. And then there is a sliding scale based on their income to determine how much they will pay for the services that are provided. At this point, Centerstone feels positive about the FQHC model and its ability to obtain that designation. You can't go after that designation until 90 days out from the day that you will begin rendering services. So you can't just preload that. So once their lease is signed and we know when the actual space will be built out, they will go for that designation and then be able to provide services there. I hope that addressed the question adequately.
With healthcare, we never can say adequate, probably, or at least not not these days. But it's hopeful to me
Right.
that you're reporting this development. That sounds promising.
And at the very least, what we have seen in models in other shelters that do have medical care on site is that it has an enormous impact on unreimbursed medical care for the healthcare providers in those communities. So
Yes.
the last number we had from MU Healthcare was $192 million in unreimbursed medical care in the most recent year. So we've seen communities impact that number in the millions of dollars, $1 to $5 million annually, just by having the clinic, because we know that our unsheltered neighbors, when they seek medical care, they go to the ER, which is the most expensive way to access medical care that you can get. And so to interrupt that cycle is one of the key things. That, and as Jess kind of touched on, the same thing holds true to the burden on law enforcement. They have reported to us that up to 30% of their calls involve a member of the unsheltered community. And on a $30 million budget, it's not hard to do that math to say that we're expecting our law enforcement folks to handle this problem. And kudos to Jessica, she's really built the relationship with CPD to begin to address that situation in our community.
That last point has indeed been made by just about everyone that has come to us on this issue, whether from law enforcement or community services, the wasting of money in the way it's presently done. So thank you for that. Another question in the chat. We represent Boone County, Muleskinners does, and so Dave Taylor lives in the far south. He says, which areas in the county outside of Columbia are experiencing the biggest increases of unhoused people needing services? He's interested to know how things are going that way, and how maybe you handle distance problems within the county.
Yeah, so we are obviously seeing more of the, I would say, housing instability. In Ashland, they have also had a rapid growth of higher cost of living and housing. Hallsville experiences some, and once you get a little bit farther north with Sturgeon, our small rural towns right now are really struggling because not just housing support is going away at a federal level, but childcare subsidies are going away or have ended. So we're seeing daycares closing or people not being able to afford daycare, so they can't work because they don't have care for their kids. There are a lot of social supports. I've heard Aging Best is in risk of losing their funding, which is part of the financial assistance for our seniors who are in home but maybe just need a home health care aid. They're losing those funding and access to people coming in so that they can stay housed. So I think what Columbia sees is people coming for resources. And to kind of touch on Ed's point and what CPD has shared, Columbia has a lot of resources, but it's acute. It's someone presents with an issue, and then we can usually provide a solution that is a work around for 24 hours, but then we have the exact same issue the next day. A lot of times it's a choice between sending someone to MUPC or sending someone to jail. And those are very expensive, acute emergency options that don't have a long-term resolution. So I would say our smaller towns, I think Sturgeon is higher for being a very small town. We're seeing a lot of housing instability in Ashland as those housing and rental prices are increasing. And then we see some Hallsville. I'm not as aware if we're seeing much out of Centralia, but it's definitely Ashland, Hallsville, and Sturgeon that have been on our radar from a shelter perspective.
And I think another component of what you're seeing there is prior to the advent of the Opportunity Campus, when the city has closed camps or cleared camps, there was no option for those folks. There was no place for them to go. So we were playing a pretty significant game of whack-a-mole with the homeless camps. And as the intensity of those camp clearings grew, those folks tended to migrate out of the city and into the county to avoid those camps being cleared. And then the county has a whole different set of rules as it applies to that and private property. And we've had examples of some private property owners in the county saying, "Hey, you can camp here," and there's no mechanism to address that at the county level. So I think there are conversations to be had there now. But the point of all that is now that once we are open, it really gives better options for folks if a camp is cleared.
I think that's a great response for David's question. I also want to note that for our meetings, we like to recognize members of the press and serving elected officials and candidates for elected office. I don't see any of the first two amongst us, but we do have a candidate, Becky Brewer, who is looking to represent exactly those areas of Boone County that you just talked about. So welcome, Becky, and you shoot or get around and get all the information that you need for your campaign, it seems to me. Really happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Herb, and ask a question if you've got one. Herb, you take the next one.
I want to compliment you and the extensive core of others who work with and for BAC. You are legendary here, and we've known you for half a century. And appreciate especially what you can accomplish, which is astounding, given how little money you spend. I do have a question that you can inform me of. I've been taught that there are two collections of homeless out there. One is the often thought of who sleep on the streets or in known encampments. That's predominantly male. And then there are others who move temporarily and short term with among friends and acquaintances, and sometimes in a car. And they sometimes this includes a lot of women and some with children. How well do you feel that your present structure and activities are serving the latter category of people who need housing first?
I think I'll let Jess go into more of the granular stuff. That's where she's stronger than I am. But I think you're describing what we would say are the chronically homeless on one hand and the situationally homeless on the other hand. And both are, we approach them both the same, but the methods and outcomes are sometimes different for those two populations. So when you're talking about the situationally homeless that are living in a car, couch surfing, as we call it, I'll let Jess speak to how we would address them differently than the chronically homeless.
So with the, I would also say there's another very large, maybe the largest portion of our homeless population is hidden homelessness. So it's kind of the couch surfing and sleeping in cars that Ed mentioned. A lot of those folks are women and families who are worried that if anyone knew that they were homeless, that would somehow get their children taken away. We know that in the Columbia Public School system, they identified around 350 kids that were literally homeless. So we do have that growing population. In terms of how we serve those two separate, whether it is chronic homelessness or situationally, it's uniform in when our case managers work with folks. The very first thing we sit down and do is identify what their immediate needs are. We do a thorough assessment of here's all the options. What are the three most important things to you right now? Maybe it's getting sober, maybe it's finding housing, maybe it is getting a job, finishing education, whatever it might be. And then we do a goal planning that structures how we're going to achieve each of their goals once we get started with them. So for our situationally or episodic homeless population, generally they have supports and maybe more access to resources than our chronically homeless, where they just need a little bit more pointing in the right direction to access those. They might be harder to reach because they're not coming into shelter. So we rely on our Columbia Homeless Outreach team. Como Mobile Aid is doing amazing work. And it requires a lot of relationship building and trust building for those people to feel comfortable coming in and knowing that there won't be repercussions. For another segment of that population, with our chronically homeless, when I mentioned the service resistance or service fatigue or for service exhaustion, I kind of relate it to sales. You have a new technology come out and there's people that are going to be at the door 24 hours early because they want to get that product right. The new Apple iPhone, right when it comes out. On the other side of that spectrum, you have your late adopters that are like, nope, I'm not getting it until I know this is a sure bet. There's not glitches. People aren't going to tell me I'm going to get all of these things and then, I'm going to be disappointed. There's a lot of trust building and putting the proof in the pudding for some of these folks before we're going to be able to get them in to give us a chance to show them, we can help move them forward as well. But at least in the beginning, as folks are coming in and we're making contact, the process is pretty universal in terms of assessing their needs and then starting to move towards their goals.
I don't know whether you covered all this or not, but David Taylor said if there are minor children or children with minor children that need these services, do you refer them or can VAC help them? Yeah, 18-year-old for the shelter, right?
So at VAC for our basic needs services, families often are accessing those. On the shelter side, our hope is that by taking adults 18 and older, that will open up space at our other local shelters for families because we do have that communal kind of open room setting, if you will. Where the other shelters are more appropriate. It's a private room. They can close the door. Having 5 kids, I don't know that I could survive a communal space. It would be my kids having the Zoomies instead of the dogs.
Oh, with their kids.
So, Love Columbia is doing a lot of work with families. First Chance for Children. True North, if there's any domestic violence, sexual assault. There's St. Raymond Society for single moms. There is Harbor House. So all of those are set up in a manner that's much more conducive to hosting children.
I think I've cleared the chat. I just had one thing to say that you may or may not want to hear, but we've been anticipating the opening of the Opportunity Center for a long time. And this presentation today is so well organized and so, beautifully displayed that it's great for us, to get this, although we were kind of expecting, many aspects of it. I'm wondering if you're able to present this work to other communities in other places. I don't like to be too proud of ourselves, but I think we're about to be very proud of you. If you just add the ribbon cutting and the, you know, the grand stuff that was in the press, you could make a big impression on some, and be a kind of inspiration to other communities who might be in a position to try to do some of the same things. You mentioned in the beginning the network. Have you been able to kind of show yourself as an example here?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, David. It is definitely our hope that we will become a model for other communities around the country, and we will open ourselves willingly and gladly to show off. But part of that needs to be, as Jessica called it, the proof in the pudding. We need to start producing the data that says that we are doing what we say we're going to do before we go far and wide, saying we've reinvented the homeless wheel, so to speak. But we have had conversations with mainly shelters in the Midwest, but we are hopeful that this can open other conversations, certainly as we network through this. And she's been to some conferences and made some good connections already. And folks are starting to hear what we're doing here in Columbia, Missouri, and are excited to see the results that we can prove out.
Yes, I can appreciate that there's a lot of work facing you to just get all this up and going before you can go around and brag on it necessarily.
Yeah.
That must have reminded Herb of another question. Herb, we'll let you have the last one.
I am so sorry. I'm gonna have to jump off. I don't know if Ed's staying on for a minute. I have a tour and we have a giant glass window on our board rooms that are all standing staring at us like
I'll catch
it
up
okay?
to you. I'll catch
Is
up.
it okay, Herb? We'll just say bye then to everybody. Or did you want to take another question, Ed?
That's funny how it zoomed in.
I could take another question. I hope.
Well, this will be the last one.
This is a closing question. You are close to your initial financial goal. How can individuals, such as we individually, or others who know about this, help contribute to the $1.4 million you need to meet the declared goal? How should we proceed?
I love the question, and I'm glad I stayed. Yes, there is an opportunity to donate on our website at vacmo.org. You can also mail a check to VAC at 1300 Bowling Street, just like the game, 1300 Bowling Street, 65201, and just put in the memo Opportunity Campus Capital Campaign. And we will be having a community open house. Registration is available for that on the website as well on June the 25th. There are 2 time slots, and we're limiting each time slot. The first one's 11 to 3, and the second one is 4 to 7. We're limiting each of those to 150. And then there will be a direct mail campaign coming out to help put us over the top of that gap that we have right now. So if you are a current VAC donor, you're in our database and you will get that mailing or email or both. And so keep an eye out for that. But we can take donations just through the mail or through the website at any time.
This is great. I like the idea of having an open house, even though I can understand how difficult that would be for what you have there. But I'm sure you'll manage to handle the intense interest that's coming.
Yeah.
And I hope that interest comes with a lot of donations to make this work. Ed and your colleague Jessica, we couldn't be more happy to have you today. And we're so happy to thank you for including us at this point for your presentation of this extraordinary thing in our community.
Certainly,
thank you so much.
we're happy to do it. And again, I appreciate the invitation to be a part of it.
Thank you.
All right. See you soon.
Bye, Ed. Okay,